Meclis Başkanım, sizi bekliyoruz. Peki, Onursal Başkanımız Sayın Mustafa Özyürek'i sahneye davet ediyorum. Saygıdeğer konuklar, değerli katılımcılar, kongre açılış bildirisini sunmak üzere Avrupa Muhasebeciler Federasyonu Başkan Vekili ve gelecek dönem başkanı Sayın Morten SPEITZER'in kürsüye davet ediyorum.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for the kind invitation to speak at your very impressive Congress here. First of all, I would like to extend a special word of thanks to your President, Morten, also to your Deputy President, XX.Türkiye, Turker, who actually invited me here during the June meeting of Accountancy Europe. Thank you very much to you, Massim. And you're a very important international liaison with Accountancy Europe. And also a special thank to Seher Gondugo, who actually made sure that I got here safely, quickly, and everything has worked smooth so far. And I can see now that technology works. It's great that technology is great when it works. When I came here in the airport, there was a guy to pick me up. He was with his smartphone, as we all have, organizing not only me, but a lot of other people. Being an auditor for more than 30 years, I look at risks. So I asked him a question. I said, what happens if your iPhone breaks down? Completely silence. Apparently that never happened before to him, but he looked a little bit curious then and a little bit scared. Another thing about technology is that we expect it to work every time we are using it. I'll give you a little story from my home. I have 3 kids. They're on the internet always. One night, the router in our home broke down. After about 5 seconds, they came to me and said, could you please get it up running? And I said, it's 10 o'clock at night, everything is closed down. And then my smallest kid, she's 15, she said, Dad, it's a human right to have access to the internet. Well, yeah, there you go. Anyway, I'll just give you a short idea about Accountancy Europe. This is Accountancy Europe. We cover in geography terms. As you can see, I have allocated a very big logo to your country. And your country is a very valuable member of Accountancy Europe for the past many years. We do cover 51 institutes, including Türmob here in Turkey, in about 37 countries. So it's not Europe alone. It's definitely not EU, so it does go beyond that. We do, of course, cover the 28 member states of EU, well, soon 27, and also cover about 1 million professionals around. Accountancy Europe also work international and also very closely with IFAC, IASB, ISB, and so forth, and is actually quite active in this area. So very shortly here is the 6 key areas that are on our agenda, and I know time is running, so I'll just be very brief on those. Reporting and transparency, and some of the previous speakers have been touching on transparency as very important. So that would not only be financial reporting, that would also be what we call non-financial reporting, is actually becoming more and more important for investors. The numbers they want to know everything that goes beyond that. And also public sector, which has been touched upon here a couple of times, is also becoming more and more important. Sustainable economy and good governance obviously is company law, but it's also cross-border services, and also I would say a very key topic these days is the fight against corruption and fraud. Anti-money laundering also a big thing in the financial sector. On the audit, we have the financial audit as we know it, but we have to think about other assurance and other assurance services as well, including also within the public sector. Finance and investment, that goes on banks and insurance, of course, but also sustainable finance is an area that is covered by Accountancy Europe. I would also mention on professional matters that, and also that Philip mentioned, ethics, trust, and skills and knowledge is on the top of our agenda right now, because those are becoming ever more important as technology actually impacts the skill sets of the employees of tomorrow. Now, our mission, if I just can dig into that in 3 areas, is to influence decision makers not only on the European scene but also worldwide. We think it's quite important that we speak with one voice in the profession, and Accountancy Europe is the profession's voice on the European scene. Thought leadership in looking into the future is also key, because we have to shape our own future. The only thing is that the future is ever changing, so that's not a constant. And finally, we have a very important task in facilitating cooperation amongst our members. I'll come back to that in a minute, how we do that. Now, we talk about digitalization, and it's already here. We know the smartphones. Philip mentioned that every kid today do sit and look wherever they are on it. Also cloud technology since, I would say, 2006, but actually before that. So that is not going to go away. Let's focus on where we as accountants can add value. And that's not in processing data. That's going to go beyond that. So that's going to be on interpretation of data, analyzing data. What does it actually mean? And that's where we still, as accountants, do have a role. So what can Accountancy Europe do in this area of technology? Back in our members' assembly in March this year, we actually had a question out for our members of where Accountancy Europe would be best placed to serve members in this area. And these are the 3 key items or areas we have. I'll dig into the details a little bit on a few other slides. But basically is to monitor what's going on the European scene in relation to technology, new laws, etc. Get members together somehow in exchanging best practices, and also raising awareness of what could the technology mean on the profession and this strategic impact actually. I give you a few examples on the monitoring. Just a few examples here. Just take one of them, which is the GDPR law that came into practice on data protection in Europe May this year. A big topic. So here we played a role in actually being in Brussels, talking to the lawmakers about how this law could be formed. It's out there now. What we also did on our own is at the bottom of the slide is the how cloud computing actually works for accountants, especially in the area of the smaller firms or for smaller practitioners. We put out a practice management statement there. So that's on the monitoring. Exchanging members' best practices, we have on Accounts Europe's website what we call the Technology Hub, which basically collects best practices from members. So this is on a voluntary basis that members put forward to Accounts Europe different kind of material. The two examples mentioned here on unified invoicing is actually an electronic tool. It's free for charge. In a basic version where you can collect invoices from clients and analyze them. The other one is a publication. It is digital transformation. It's actually a large publication from the Danish Institute from where I come. It's translated into English and gives some ideas of which areas to focus on as accountants and where we can actually do a difference. And finally, raising awareness. We have had for 2 consecutive years now what we call the Digital Day in Brussels, where members can go and have an update on the latest trends within technology that affects the profession. We also use like Policy News and others. And a third one is coming up this year as well. It's been a great success. Everybody is quite interested what's going on. Coming back to our future, we put out a survey, what we call Technology Barometer, to our members, what they think about their own future. And that was one of the last remarks made by Philip. And what you can see here actually, and this is, I would say, good news, is that, well, 81%, and that's the big yellow, there is an opportunity to improve our services. The blue one, there is an opportunity to reinvent our profession, moving away from data processing to interpretation, and also using technology to create trust. The green one is actually the flip side of the blue one, because if there is an opportunity, there would be a risk, but I don't see that as a problem here. The black one is what I call the dinosaur, because that's where only hope, and luckily only 6% of our members think that technology is a threat to their existence. Other 6% just ignore technology because they say that, well, everything is going to be usual business, which I can assure you it will not, and it is not. We see that already. Raising awareness, we have tried to, in Accounts Europe, put that into 3 buckets. One is corporate reporting. That's what companies do to the markets, to the registers and regulatory authorities. On the audit assurance, which is the services we provide, and then we have a separate topic on the small and medium-sized enterprises, because that's a great concern of everyone in the profession, that we should not only deal with the large and the listed companies, but also the small ones, who in which in Europe actually makes up 90% by number of the business. Now, on corporate reporting, very shortly, we recognize there is a growing number of the audience being interested in corporate reporting. We have seen for the last, say, 2 to 5 years that the NGOs, the non-governmental organizations, is becoming much more vocal and pushing for more information that goes beyond the numbers themselves. And that leads to the second bullet, which the crucial non-financial information, for example, in sustainability. Technology will drive change here. And just to give you an example, we put out a few years ago a thought leadership publication following a congress and also I would say a survey to our members on what we call the Core and More model, which is a building block model to financial reporting, where basically the financial information is tried to be linked to the non-financial information in a much more structured way than we do today. On audited insurance, we issued a discussion paper back in 2014, that may seem a long time ago, but also had the audit conference in 2015. And what came out of that was we recognized that there is a change in the requirements from stakeholders. We need to respond to those. We did encourage, of course, innovation to be driven by technology, because that's the train which is going to it is running out there, and that was also underlined in the opening movie, a great movie, by the way. And that leads to a third thing, which is the skills and the attractivity actually of our profession. What type of people do we need to attract in the future? I mean, would that be the classical accountant, or would it be a computer specialist, for instance? I think it would be a combination, but we need to clearly look at the competencies of our future generation that is going to take over from us when we leave the scene. We have also in this area of audit assurance been very active, as I said, on the SMEs, adapting our services to SMEs, but also on the environmental, the sustainability, and governmental non-financial reporting. And what the big thing is here, that how do we actually provide assurance in this? I think we have to be bold here and not very traditional. Most what I have here has been mentioned already, so I'll just pass it very quickly. Big data, of course. The technology power and the power of processing is so big today that we can analyze entire populations at our clients' data. And that is being done by computers, that's fine. But the interpretation of the data and what it actually means, that is where we need high qualified accountants. Still cannot be done by robots. Even though artificial intelligence is actually coming in, machine learning has been mentioned, and go into the data. This is happening to the lawyers. I saw your slide, Philip, on lawyers were very low on this, but with Mr. Watson, the computer, is actually being rolled out in certain jurisdictions in Denmark, for instance. That has been done already, where this computer technique can actually go through thousands and thousands of legal documents, reading verdicts from the judges, and come up with an evaluation of the probability of a certain case, how that would end out. So that is actually happening already. Social listening and process mining, I just have a few slides on. Social listening is actually when we understand if we do have an audit client that we have to understand, just listening to the thing out there. It could be LinkedIn, Twitter, Google, Facebook, Flickr, YouTube, you name it. I haven't mentioned Instagram or Snapchat. That may be a special issue. But there's so many data out there that we can actually pull and get an idea of what's going on in the company, maybe identify issues. That is what we're doing today. I have, of course, one word of warning here is that what kind of data is on Facebook may not be valid. There's a lot of fake news out there, so just watch out. But we can use those platforms to collect intelligence from the clients, for instance, when we do audits. Process mining is when you are in the company and maybe the client tells you what they do with the data, how they account for it, and what the process is. What process mining can do actually is to analyze the data and show to you how it actually flows through the system. For instance, I mean, does it actually reconcile to that flowchart that the client showed you on how it works? And the two small illustrations there shows you that, well, the rule may be that you should go through the fences on a certain path. All of a sudden people find out that's too difficult, so we make a shortcut. It becomes very clear here that where all the grass should be, it isn't, because people are going around the fence instead of through the fence. In the same manner, process mining can actually, when we had the right tools, go into the client system, analyze data, and show how they actually do. And we can compare to what they tell us. So big question coming up all the time is that will we be replaced by what we could call accountabots? And why they're always shaped as humans, I don't know, because basically they're just a program. But I very much agree with Philip when he says, well, there are certain areas where you can do it. In looking at data, the diagnosis of data, presenting data, maybe even interpretation to a certain extent. But when it comes to judgment and the ethical judgment, and also serving in the public interest as we do as accountants, we are providing the trust. And that, in my view, cannot be taken away. What can be automated will be automated, that's for sure. But the foundation of trade and any kind of relationship is based on trust. And as accountants, we are providing that trust. So I see a bright future for us there, because that is not going to disappear. A short remark on SME, and you see the gentleman on the slide with his hands looking like this. That's Arnold Schilder. He's working with IAASB. Both in Denmark, where I come from, and the Nordics, and also now Accounts Europe, have been calling for standards for SMEs that are adaptable, scalable, and actually usable for a long time. We had a conference earlier this year where Arnold committed IAASB to look further into the issue, because we are not there yet. So I can promise you that this is an area of key focus for Accountancy Europe on the small entities, because not only in your country, but also in my country, this is actually an important part of the economy. And just to show you what we did in just the past year, on the SME, we did a number of publications, we had events, we did consultation responses to different bodies, but also articles and press releases in this area. And this would be some examples in the SME area that we actually do. One is actually quite old, because that's our old logo, FAE, which is now Accounts Europe, about cloud computing and how that can affect the work of the SMP. Because we have to move that way. We also look at how the whole GDPR, as I mentioned before, from an SME perspective is actually relevant, put out a publication there early this year. In the taxation area, and we heard from your ministers actually earlier, on VAT and also on the direct income tax is actually quite important, also in the SME. And digitalization here is actually a very important way to make sure that you collect taxes there. I'll just conclude my presentation here with 2 slides, and then I'll stop on the Accountancy Europe strategy. Well, basically what we see in front of us for the next couple of years is a rough road. Civil society is putting up more and more expectations towards us. Public scrutiny by regulators is becoming more fierce. And following that, we also see stricter and stricter regulations as a reaction. And the top concerns basically is that we live because we are trusted. So whenever there's a distrust, and that not only goes for our profession, that is politicians, that's businesses, but we do have an opportunity to restore that. And that is very key to us, obviously. Technology is going to transform businesses, markets, jobs, and minds is doing that already. Social justice is about inequalities in income, but also a fairer tax system. That goes beyond the borders of countries, so that's probably not so easy to do. And then we have the geopolitics on the trade wars that is going on and so forth. Brexit in our own little region is creating a lot of headaches at the moment, and Accountancy Europe is also trying to evaluate on the mutual recognition on education, which is quite important. And this is just one slide on our strategy. I will not go into detail, time taking into consideration, and that will conclude my short presentation here. Thank you very much for listening.